I woke up this morning thinking it'd be just another boring Tuesday, but instead I'm standing in the ruins of New York City watching the sky literally tear itself apart. My name's Jake Morrison. I'm 28 years old, and I just accidentally jumped forward in time to witness the last day humanity will ever see. I know that sounds insane, like something out of a sci-fi movie, but I've got about 6 hours before everything ends and I need to tell someone what I saw. So buckle up, because this story is going to mess you up worse than it's already messed me up. Let me back up and explain how I got here, because it wasn't some grand experiment or crazy invention. I work as an electrician in Brooklyn, mostly doing residential wiring and the occasional commercial job when money gets tight. Yesterday I got called to this old brownstone in Park Slope, one of those historic buildings that looks beautiful on the outside, but has wiring from like the 1940s. The owner, this elderly woman named Mrs. Chun, told me her basement kept having power surges and she was worried about a fire. The basement was exactly what you'd expect: dusty, cluttered with decades of forgotten junk, and smelling like mold and old newspapers. I was tracing the electrical panel when I noticed something weird behind a false wall, like someone had deliberately hidden a section of the basement. Mrs. Chen claimed she had no idea it was there, said the house belonged to her late husband's family for generations. I pried open the wall and found this small room, maybe 8 by 10 feet, completely empty except for this strange device in the center. It looked like something between a grandfather clock and one of those old telegraph machines, all brass and copper with these intricate engravings covering every surface. There were symbols I didn't recognize, definitely not English or Chinese, and the whole thing hummed with this low frequency I could feel in my chest. I should have left it alone, should have called Mrs. Chun down to see it, but I'm an electrician and I was curious about what was making it hum. So I touched it, and that's when everything went sideways. The moment my fingers made contact with the brass surface, the room exploded with light. I felt this pulling sensation, like being yanked backward through a tunnel at 1,000,000 miles an hour while simultaneously being stretched in every direction. My stomach lurched, my vision went white, and I swear I could hear voices whispering in languages I'd never heard before. Then everything stopped, the light vanished, the pulling ceased, and I was standing in the middle of a street I didn't recognize. Except it was a street I did recognize. It was Fifth Avenue in Manhattan. But it was wrong, so completely wrong that my brain couldn't process it at first. The buildings were crumbling, covered in vines and vegetation like nature had been reclaiming them for years. Cars were abandoned in the middle of the road, their tires flat, windows smashed, covered in rust and debris. The sky was the worst part. It wasn't blue or gray or any normal color. It was this sickly orange-red, shot through with these black cracks that looked like the atmosphere itself was breaking apart. I could see stars through those cracks, even though the sun was still visible, this dim red thing that barely gave off any light. The air tasted metallic and wrong, and it was completely silent. No cars, no people, no birds, nothing. I spent the first hour just wandering around in shock, trying to figure out what the hell had happened. My phone was dead, completely fried, and my watch had stopped at 3:47, which was exactly when I touched that device. I kept expecting to wake up, to realize this was some kind of nightmare or hallucination from bad takeout. But everything felt too real: the crunch of glass under my boots, the smell of decay in the air, the way my breath fogged in the cold. That's when I found the newspaper. It was pinned under a rock on the steps of the New York Public Library, preserved somehow despite everything else being destroyed. The date on it made my blood run cold. November 17th, 2087. I'd jumped forward 63 years, and based on the state of everything around me, I'd arrived on the last day. The newspaper's headline was simple and terrifying: "Final evacuation attempts fail. Project Exodus. Declared lost." I sat down right there on those library steps and read the whole thing, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the pages. According to the article, something called the Cascade Event had been predicted for years, some kind of chain reaction in Earth's magnetic field that would eventually tear the atmosphere apart. Governments had tried everything: magnetic field generators, atmospheric stabilizers, even attempting to move the entire population to underground cities. But nothing worked, and humanity had spent the last decade trying to evacuate as many people as possible to Mars colonies and lunar stations. The article estimated that only about 2 billion people had made it off-world, leaving 5 billion to face the end. I kept reading, looking for any clue about what would happen next, and found a smaller article at the bottom of the page about 0 hour being calculated for 9:47 p.m. Eastern Time. I checked my broken watch again. It still said 3:47, which meant if time was moving normally here, I had 6 hours until the end. 6 hours to figure out how to get back home, back to 2024, back to my crappy apartment and my job in my life that suddenly seemed pretty damn good. I stood up and started running, no destination in mind, just running because I had to do something other than sit there and wait to die. That's when I heard it, music. Faint at first, but definitely music, something classical that I vaguely recognized from a movie soundtrack. I followed the sound for 3 blocks until I found its source, a small group of people gathered in the ruins of what used to be a coffee shop. There were maybe 20 of them, all ages, sitting on broken furniture and rusted metal chairs, listening to an old man play violin. I must have looked insane bursting in like that, covered in dust and breathing hard, but they just smiled at me. "Welcome," the violin player said, not stopping his song. "You're just in time for the last concert Earth will ever hear." His accent was thick, maybe Russian or Eastern European, and his hands were weathered but steady as he played. I asked them what they were doing, why they weren't trying to escape or find shelter or something. A young woman, couldn't have been more than 25, laughed and said, "Escape to where?" "This is it, friend. We're the ones who stayed behind." She introduced herself as Sarah and explained that everyone here had chosen to remain on Earth, either because they couldn't afford evacuation, had family they refused to leave, or simply wanted to die on their home planet. "Besides," an older man added, "the scientists say it'll be quick. The atmospheric collapse will cause rapid decompression. We probably won't even feel it." He said it so matter-of-factly, like he was describing the weather, and I realized these people had made peace with their fate. They'd spent months, maybe years, coming to terms with the end, while I'd been thrust into it with no warning or preparation. I sat with them for the next 2 hours, listening to their stories. Sarah had been a teacher before the schools closed down. She stayed behind because her elderly mother refused to leave the city. The violin player, whose name was Dmitri, had been a professional musician who traveled the world, but always called New York home. There was a couple, Marcus and Jennifer, who'd been married for 40 years and decided that if this was the end, they'd face it together where they'd first met. They asked about me, and I didn't know what to say. How could I explain that I was from 63 years in the past that I'd accidentally stumbled into their apocalypse? So I lied, told them I'd been working underground and lost track of time, just emerged to find the end waiting. They accepted it without question, maybe because at this point nothing really mattered anymore. As the hours passed, more people started arriving at the coffee shop. Some brought food, others brought musical instruments, and someone even dragged in an old battery-powered speaker that still worked. We had an impromptu party, celebrating life in the face of death, sharing memories and jokes and songs. It was the most surreal and beautiful thing I'd ever experienced, these strangers coming together to comfort each other in humanity's final hours. Around 7 p.m. I noticed something was happening to the sky. Those black cracks were getting bigger, spreading across the orange-red atmosphere like a windshield slowly shattering. The air pressure was dropping, I could feel it in my ears. And the wind was picking up from the east, carrying the smell of ozone and something else. Something that reminded me of burnt metal. People started gathering outside the coffee shop, staring up at the sky, and I joined them. That's when I saw the ships. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, streaking across the sky like falling stars in reverse, heading up toward space. Last-minute evacuations, Marcus explained. Some people waited until the very end to leave, hoping for a miracle. We watched in silence as the ships disappeared through the cracks in the atmosphere. And I wondered if they'd make it, if anyone up there was watching Earth's final moments. At 8:30, the ground started to shake. Not an earthquake, but something else, like the planet itself was groaning under some impossible strain. Buildings that had stood for decades suddenly collapsed, sending up clouds of dust that mixed with the strange orange light. The wind became a howl, and I could see actual chunks of atmosphere being torn away, revealing the black void of space beyond. Sarah grabbed my hand, tears streaming down her face, and said, "I'm scared." I squeezed back and told her it would be okay, even though I had no idea if that was true. Dmitri started playing his violin again, some haunting melody I didn't recognize, and others began to sing, their voices rising above the wind. It was defiant and beautiful and heartbreaking all at once. That's when I felt it, that same pulling sensation from when I touched the device in Mrs. Chun's basement. I looked down at my hands and saw they were starting to fade, becoming translucent like I was turning into a ghost. The device was pulling me back, whatever mechanism had brought me here was reversing, and I was about to return to 2024. No, I whispered, but I couldn't stop it. The world around me started to blur. The people, the ruined city, the broken sky all bleeding together into streams of color. Sarah was still holding my hand, but I could feel her grip fading, feel myself being pulled away from this moment. The last thing I saw was the clock tower in the distance showing 9:46 p.m., 1 minute before 0 hour. Then I was back in the basement, sprawled on the concrete floor next to that strange device. Mrs. Chun was standing over me, asking if I was okay, saying I'd only been gone for a few seconds. My phone showed the correct date and time, November 17th, 2024, 3:47 p.m. Everything was normal. Everything was fine. Except I now carried the memory of a day that wouldn't happen for another 63 years. I finished the wiring job in a daze, took Mrs. Chen's check, and went home. For the past week, I've been trying to process what I experienced, trying to convince myself it was just some hallucination caused by electrical shock. But it felt too real, too vivid, too specific to be a dream. I remember Sarah's face, Dimitri's music, the taste of that metallic air, the sound of the world ending. I've been researching the Cascade event, trying to find any scientific basis for what I saw. Turns out there are theories about Earth's magnetic field weakening, about potential atmospheric collapse scenarios, but nothing concrete, nothing predicted for 2087. Maybe I changed something by being there, maybe my presence altered the timeline somehow. Or maybe it's inevitable, and we've got 63 years to figure out how to prevent it or get off this rock. The worst part is not knowing if I should tell anyone. Who would believe me? I'm just an electrician who touched something weird in a basement, not a scientist or a time traveler or anyone important. But I keep thinking about Sarah and Dimitri and all those people who chose to face the end together, and I feel like I owe them something, like I need to make sure their sacrifice wasn't meaningless. I went back to Mrs. Chan's house yesterday, tried to get access to that basement again. She said she'd had it sealed up, that the device had started making strange noises and giving her headaches, so she hired someone to brick over the false wall. The device is gone now, buried behind cinder blocks, and with it any chance of proving what I experienced or warning anyone about what's coming. So here I am, telling you this story, hoping someone out there will listen and take it seriously. We have 63 years to figure out how to save ourselves, to prevent the Cascade event, to make sure that November 17th, 2087 isn't the last day humanity sees. I don't know if it's possible, don't know if we can change fate, or if I just witnessed one possible future among infinite timelines. All I know is that I held hands with a woman who won't be born for another 30 years, listened to music that hasn't been composed yet, and watched the sky break apart like shattered glass. I saw the end of the world and I can't unsee it. Can't forget those faces or that moment of strange beauty in the midst of apocalypse. If this was real, if that future is waiting for us, then we need to start working now. But there's something else, something I haven't told you yet. When I got home that night, I found a piece of paper in my jacket pocket, folded into a small square. I don't remember anyone giving it to me, don't remember putting it there myself. The paper is old, yellowed at the edges, and written in handwriting I recognize as my own but aged, shaky, like I wrote it when I was much older. The message is simple, just 5 words that have kept me awake every night since. This time, don't come back. I don't know what it means, don't know if it's a warning or an instruction or a message from another timeline. But sometimes late at night I feel that pulling sensation again, like the device is calling to me through 63 years and walls of cinder blocks, inviting me to take another trip. And God help me, part of me wants to go back. Part of me wants to return to that ruined city, to find Sarah and Dimitri and the others, to stand with them at the end. Because maybe that's what the note means. Maybe next time I'm not supposed to return to 2024. Maybe I'm supposed to stay there and face whatever comes with the people who chose to remain. Maybe that's my destiny, to witness the end and make sure someone remembers that humanity died with dignity. The device is calling, and I don't know how much longer I can resist. Thank you for listening to this story, and I really hope it got under your skin the way it got under mine. If you enjoyed this journey to the end of days, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe to Time Traveling Stories for more mind-bending tales that'll keep you up at night wondering what's real. Drop a comment below and tell me what you would do if you knew exactly when and how the world would end. Would you try to stop it, or would you make peace with fate? Hit that notification bell so you never miss our next reality-breaking adventure. And remember, sometimes the scariest thing about the future isn't what we don't know, it's what we do.